Today is the day many of you have been anxiously awaiting for years in this town. And you get to go to the polls and vote today on the recall of Jackson County Executive Frank White all at once now.
Woo! Woo!
Oh, my goodness. Mark's got his Monarchs gear on today.
I don't get to vote, so this is my vote.
What is that supposed to mean? You got Monarchs gear on, where, of course, Frank White is the first base coach for the Independent League team over there in KCK. Is that you voting to say you want Frank to stay on as the first base coach but not the county executive if you had a vote in Jackson County? Is that what you're saying?
Go, Frank, go.
Oh, no.
Let's go.
No. That's, you know what? I know why you want Frank to stay, because you want the Chiefs and the Royals in Kansas. That's what this is really about for you. Yeah. I have sniffed you out in the minute and 8 seconds I've been on the air. This for you is all about getting the Chiefs and the Royals to Kansas. And you think, Mark, that if Frank White stays, they're gone.
That's true. If I lived in Jackson County, I'd probably vote no, though.
Of course.
I'd take him out. Yeah.
Well, that means you'd vote yes.
All right, vote yes. Yeah.
Let's not confuse the listener.
Sorry.
A yes vote today means Frank White is done as the county executive.
Yes to recall.
A no vote means that Frank White will stay as the county executive. I would be a yes as well if I was a resident of Jackson County. I know that's going to shock you if you've been listening to this show for the last several months.
Talk about a bombshell.
But I would be a yes vote for Frank White and getting rid of him as the county executive. And I know that Frank is going around telling people, well, you just wait. It could be worse than me. Yeah, it could be, but I'll roll the dice. It's kind of like when you break up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend. When their last pitch is, oh, boy, you don't know what you're missing out on. No, I do. I'm well aware. We've dated for a while. Frank's been around for nearly 2 terms. We're done. I'll take my chances. I'll roll the dice. Because how much worse can it really get?
You were a good softball player in college, but not anymore. Sorry, lady.
No longer. That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
So that's where I sit here and I say, I believe Frank is going to get recalled today. And I don't think it's going to be all that close. Now, I'm starting to hear some things and get some things from some of you who are saying there has been some confusion in terms of polling locations moving, but, you know, you probably got something in the mail. John Anthony showed us that here a few weeks ago. So just know where you got to go. Understand it's a special election. You can look it up online before you do that. But for Frank White, it really is going to be the end of a really sad story for a Kansas City legend. Frank White is obviously somebody who is from here, who made his name here, obviously, playing baseball, and then in the last several years got into politics. And it all started off just fine. You had the hometown kid, the hometown ball player, leading his hometown county. It sounded great on paper. And then came the property assessments. And then came the Chiefs and the Royals. And then came the fighting with Kansas City over jail space and who was going to share what and could we use services together. And then came all the issues with the COVID money that Jackson County had access to, but Kansas City technically did not, because at the time of the census, which dated back to 2010 and 2020, they hadn't done the 2020 census yet, Kansas City was under 500,000 residents, which meant they had to rely on Jackson County, Missouri for any COVID relief money. So that set up a whole new set of issues. So every step of the way, Frank White has oftentimes gotten in his own way. And Frank has had that chip on his shoulder mentality and approach, which works in baseball, right? It works in professional sports. When you're the guy who's got the chip on his shoulder, and that keeps you motivated, and that keeps you moving in the right direction, and that maybe allows you to overcome what your pure talent is and stay focused and stay driven. In politics, it makes you bitter. And we are at the bitter end of the Frank White Jackson County executive drama and saga that we have lived through for far too long. And I'm putting the over-under today at 62.5% of those who decide we're done with Frank White. It could push 70. It wouldn't shock me one bit if that number hits 70% of voters today. Because remember, it's a random Tuesday in late September. You tell me who's going to be super motivated today to get out there and vote to recall Frank White. Those who want him gone, not those who want him to stay. That's just par for the course. That's how this goes. So I'm expecting an overwhelming recall of Frank White today. And he even tried to pull some last-minute shenanigans yesterday. I saw this. He tried to basically get a judge to put the election on hold for a period of time. And that thing got smacked down real fast. I mean, I saw that.
Pickleball court.
Oh, gosh. Man, that thing just got smoked. An appeals court denied Frank White's last-ditch effort to stall today's recall election. That happened all in the matter of just a few hours yesterday.
Yeah, I was like, breaking. He's filed the appeal, and then 15 minutes later, breaking. It was denied.
Breaking. Frank White is desperate. That's the only breaking news out of yesterday. And he tried to pull every trick out of the book. And thankfully, the appeals court said, not so fast, my friend. You ain't pulling that one off today. As the great Lee Corso famously said for years on College Game Day.
Good thing, too, man. I've had my outfit picked out today. I know what I'm wearing when I go to the polls, so no problem there. I'm ambidextrous now. I was practicing coloring the dot with my left hand. I'm primarily right-handed, so in case something happens...
You're prepared?
Yes. Right. Fill in that dot completely, kids.
Hey, Mark, can you lend John your Monarchs hat for the day if John wants it?
I think I could do that. The last time I wore this outfit was on the set of Untitled KC show.
Oh, so, did you really? Yeah. You broke out. You've got the Monarchs shirt, the Monarchs jersey, and the Monarchs hat.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you look like $1 million in there. We'll get a photo of Mark today and pop it up on social media for Frank White recall election day in Jackson County. We want to hear from you as you get to the polls. What does it look like this morning? We'll hear from KCTV5's Nathan Brennan as well. He is covering this one on the ground across Jackson County and get a feel for what's going on, as today could be the day that we say goodbye to Frank White as a Jackson County executive. And that will open up the door to the Chiefs and the Royals potentially getting back into a deep negotiation with Jackson County. They've got a deadline in Kansas coming up here in the next few weeks if they want to jump across the state line. If the Kansas deal was that great, I'll say it for the 100th time. If the Kansas deal was that great, why would they be waiting out a Frank White recall? Just go to Kansas. If it's that outstanding of a deal, can't miss opportunity, no one's ever turned down this kind of money, then they'd be gone by now. They wouldn't be waiting for Frank White to get recalled. Just think about this for 5 seconds. I know there are many of you that are dying to see these two teams go to Kansas. If the money actually worked, if the math made sense, for 70% of the stadium to be funded by a taxing district that they would make up and call a star bond district, they would be gone. They're waiting for a reason. The Kansas offer has been there forever, and they haven't jumped. Ask yourself why. 913-408-7957. It's great to have you here on KCMO. Coming up, I do want to touch on something that went viral yesterday on social media from one of many of your favorite cable news shows. And it's important to poke some holes in the argument as we sit here and discuss the tragic uptick in violence we are seeing across the country right now and what is actually the motivator behind it. We'll get to it next on 95.7 FM. I don't usually watch The Five on Fox News. It's their most popular show, but, 5 o'clock is 4 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone. They call it The Five. It's five people sitting at the table. Usually you have Jessica Tarlov, who is the one left-leaning or liberal person, whatever you want to call it, on the panel. And this clip from yesterday's show went viral. And they were talking about what happened in Michigan, where this man, of course, drives into a Mormon church, opens fire, place lights on fire, and you have multiple people ending up getting killed. This person who did this was an Iraq War veteran, apparently supported the president of the United States. He was a Trump supporter. But there's a fine line between saying the person that committed this heinous act happened to be a Trump supporter and the president of the United States somehow incited violence against the Mormon church, which led one of his supporters to go out there and commit a heinous act of violence, right? I mean, these are two very different conclusions to come to. And there's a nuance here that gets totally ignored when you talk about stuff like this. So I want to play this from yesterday. I saw it last night on social media and bring to you the part of the conversation that I even think got lost in the aftermath of Jessica Tarlov's commentary, because you got 5 people that end up just yelling at each other on the set.
The guy who drove up to the Mormon church, set the place on fire, killed 5 people, shooting them, was a Trump supporter. He had a Trump Vance flag in his backyard, which some on the right are trying to say that it said "Stop Trump." Doesn't make any sense. And if a leftist or someone had killed someone and had a Dark Brandon flag or a Biden-Harris flag, you don't think that Kash Patel, that would have been the first thing that he would have said?
Yeah, because the right is going everywhere saying, go after the Mormon people. You know there's a difference. You know there's a difference when there's one person, a one-off, and people that are going on the day-to-day basis. It's not a one-off. Go back to the Axios chart, and you can see how much of a not one-off it is. The hypocrisy is astounding. If you want to have a message of tolerance and let's get these people the mental help they need, because he needed mental help, so did the guy in North Carolina who killed 3 people at that waterfront bar, a veteran, people who we ignore and don't treat. You know, people said warning signs for decades that had been ignored. Make that your message no matter who's killing people. But when the shoe is on the other foot and you can't demonize the left for this one, they say nothing. Nothing. Oh, it was just about anti-Christian bias. It was a Christian, by the way, killing other Christians.
So that was Jessica Tarlov on Fox News yesterday on The 5, which is the most popular show that the channel has. And it's a very disingenuous argument to make. And they went back and forth after that, but you start to get too many voices in there. You can't tell who's saying what, and no one's allowed to actually develop a coherent thought. So, yes, do we have evidence right now that this person in Michigan who went to this Mormon church and shot it up over the weekend was a voter of the president of the United States? We do, according to multiple reports. That being said, is his support for the president of the United States what led him to go allegedly commit this violent act? No, there is not any evidence to suggest that. No one is sitting here and trying to tell you that someone or people who voted for Donald Trump cannot also be bad and be evil and do violent things. We are a country of 330 million people. 75 to 80 million people voted for Donald Trump. Okay? They're not all the second coming.
Talk about a bombshell.
Okay? They're not. There are bad people who vote for everybody in this country. The question is, are your politicians fanning the flames for those who are mentally unwell and driving people who already have serious issues to commit violence? That's the question. This Mormon church was not attacked because of Donald Trump's rhetoric against the Mormons or the LDS church, right? That's where you can't sit here and say, well, this is an example of right-wing violence because he supported Trump. No, that is not in the same playbook as what you are seeing in the wake of an attack on an ICE facility where somebody has bullets that say anti-ICE on them and shell casings that say anti-ICE on them. This is not the same, sadly and tragically, as what happened to Charlie Kirk, where the rhetoric gets so bad against Charlie Kirk that people who are mentally unwell go out there and say on their shell casings, hey, fascist, catch. This is not the same as somebody going to a church in Minneapolis who already has serious mental health issues based on their transitioning and opens up fire on little kids, in part likely driven by what is an anti or perceived anti-trans narrative by some corners of our subculture right now, it's not the same. Yes, there will be people who voted for Donald Trump who commit acts of violence. That's just playing the numbers. Those are just the facts, right? Because people do bad things and we're a big country with hundreds of millions of people. I don't think everybody who votes like me is some kind of choir boy or girl. No, not for a second. That would be naive. The question is there rhetoric out there that is fanning the flames? And sure, I'll be the first one to sit here and tell you that, yeah, Trump's rhetoric could be better. Sure. Absolutely. It's been the case for 10 years. But you can't point the finger at him on any of this stuff that's happened as of late. The big stories, the tragic stories that have unfolded in this country over the last several weeks, you can't look at this and say, well, that's obviously on Trump. Could he bring down the temperature a bit? Yeah. Do I think that his political opponents would bring down their temperature at all? No, I don't. I really don't. I don't think it would make a difference. And you can say that's me being cynical. I think that's me just following the media and following what I've seen on cable news and on social media and in your major mainstream American newspapers for the better part of a decade now. There is no evidence to suggest that they're going to tone this thing down. When you need these folks to look in the mirror and say, we're done doing what we are doing. We are done having Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, call Stephen Miller, Donald Trump's chief of staff, a fascist as he did over the weekend. That's where there needs to be some self-reflection here. And it's not happening. And to tie it back to what happened in Michigan, my gosh, I can't imagine. I mean, I know for many of us, we spend our weekends or our Sunday mornings inside of a church. I cannot imagine experiencing and going through what that Mormon church went through on Sunday. It is evil and it is unfathomable. And the fact that the guy voted for Donald Trump, if you think that's basically the equivalent of, well, what happened to Charlie Kirk, now we've got this on the other side, that is so disingenuous. And yeah, do we need to have a mental health conversation? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But, you know, when you bring up that part of the equation and you say, is it time to bring back asylums and institutions? Nope, can't do that. Then what do you want to do? Make everybody feel good, say all the right things, and keep moving on with your day? Or just take away everybody's guns? Because that is certainly not the answer. Coming up, news in 2 minutes, and then who in the sports world might end up running for U.S. Senate? We'll tell you who next. From radio host to the United States Senate? No, not me, okay? Trust me. I'm not going down that road. Paul Finebaum. If you are a college football fan, you know the name very well. Paul Finebaum told Outkick.com yesterday that he is considering running for the U.S. Senate in Alabama. So if you're a Missouri fan, KU fan, K-State fan, Iowa State fan, Arkansas fan, you're any of those right here in Kansas City, you know the name Paul Finebaum. He made a name for himself as a very popular radio host in Birmingham, Alabama. He now resides in North Carolina because he's an employee of ESPN. He's been doing SEC network stuff. That's where his show is broadcast and has been for the last, I think, 10 years or so. He's been with ESPN. So he announced to Clay Travis yesterday on Outkick.com that he is seriously exploring a run for U.S. Senate. Now, I would vote for the guy if I had a vote. If any of us lived in Alabama, I'd vote for the guy in a heartbeat because I actually think that while he would run as a Republican, as much as his show was and is chaotic and filled with hot takes at times, he's actually a pretty mild-mannered and reasonable guy. I've talked to him personally. I've done interviews with Paul Finebaum. I like him a lot. But the broader point is what led Paul Finebaum to this decision to potentially leave ESPN. He's not a young man. He's 70 years old, and possibly run for U.S. Senate. And it's something that has impacted a lot of us over the last nearly 3 weeks now. And that is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Paul Finebaum was talking to Clay Travis yesterday, and here's what he said on why he is now potentially on the precipice of running for U.S. Senate, and I believe he's going to do it. I don't think he says all this stuff, does this big sit-down interview, gets all this attention, New York Times, ESPN, everybody writing about it, and then be like, no, I'm good. I think yesterday was basically the announcement before the announcement from Paul Finebaum, and here's what he had to say about the impact that Charlie Kirk's assassination had on this potential decision to run for office.
What was it like for you to see what happened to Charlie Kirk and then go on the SEC network and talk about games, challenging real-life things compared to, frankly, the fun things in life? How do you balance that?
I spent 4 hours numb, talking about things that didn't matter to me. And it kept building throughout that week, and I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I had never met him. So finally, I watched all the coverage, including you on Fox on Friday night. I was in Baton Rouge, and Saturday morning I woke up and went over to get ready for our show, and I saw Tim Tebow. And I said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And after he finished eating, he came over, we went outside, and I asked him about Charlie Kirk, and he was very close to him. And he said, he looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I said, it's hard to describe not being involved in politics, not being involved, how that affected me and affected tens of millions of people all over this country. And it was an awakening. And I went out and did the show that morning, but it still nagged at me. And I couldn't get through it. Tebow was soothing to me because he told me a little bit about his relationship with Charlie Kirk, but I felt very empty doing what I was doing that day. That affected me in a way that I never really expected to be affected by.
And I think that's something that a lot of us have battled over the last 3 weeks or so. Being impacted by something in a way that a lot of us would not have anticipated. Now, I think especially for a younger generation of conservatives, Charlie Kirk was the flag bearer for the millennial and Gen Z crowd in particular. But here's Paul Finebaum at 70 saying, this impacted me in a way that I just did not expect. And Charlie Kirk was less than half of Paul Finebaum's age. And he's saying that. And it's admirable, and I respect the fact that he's saying that out loud. Because it's one thing for me, as basically a peer of Charlie's, or many of you listening under the age of, let's say, 50 or something like that, where there was more of a relationship with Charlie Kirk because you felt that being of similar age. But that's not the case for Paul Finebaum. But he's saying, I had a hard time going on the air. Paul Finebaum, if you don't know, is synonymous with the sport of college football, especially in the Southeast. And he's like, I didn't want to go on the air that Saturday. My mind was completely consumed with other stuff. This is the sandbox of life, sports, and I couldn't get through it. It's one of the reasons I elected to leave sports for the most part on a full-time basis almost 10 years ago now, because I realized there are far more important and interesting things to talk about in this world, and I love being a sports fan. And trust me, Saturdays, I'm watching college football. Sundays, I'm locked in on the NFL. I'll check out Major League Baseball wildcard games tonight, and I was all over the Ryder Cup this weekend. But when it comes to doing this and broadcasting every single day, you want to talk about real life or you want to talk about the sandbox? And the sandbox is fun ahead of a big NFL Sunday. But outside of that, man, do I want to be sitting there in mid-July trying to figure out how to talk about a Royals game for 4 hours? I'm a hard pass. And that is a realization that Paul Finebaum came to in the last couple of weeks. And the other thing that came out of the interview is that Paul Finebaum said he had a sit-down lined up with the president of the United States in 2019. That was Donald Trump the first time around. And ESPN said no. They nixed it. They canceled it. ESPN has been woke for a very long time. They have had a double standard for conservatives and for liberals who work for that network for a very long time. A lot of their more conservative commentators are gone, and they're women, by the way. Sage Steele, now doing her own thing. Samantha Ponder, formerly Samantha Steele, I believe, right? Mark, she was Samantha Steele before Samantha Ponder. Then she married Christian Ponder, who played quarterback for Florida State.
That's right.
She is a very outspoken conservative Christian woman. She left. She's now raising kids. Paul Finebaum calling out his own employer saying, I had an interview lined up with Donald Trump, and they canceled it on me. They said no. So there's a massive double standard there, and I don't think Paul Finebaum is calling out his own employer and then being like, no, I'm actually going to stick around. Can we renegotiate that contract? Like, I don't think that's what he's doing. I think that was the announcement before the announcement yesterday for Paul Finebaum. He's not calling out ESPN and then looking to stick around. He's probably going to run for U.S. Senate. And I believe that Trump will probably get behind him. He said that the White House called him up to check in on his interest here before the interview yesterday. It actually reminds me a lot of what's going on here in Kansas with our governor's race. It's a very crowded field with the Republicans right now. It's not obvious who's going to cut through. The White House wants to play a role, but they're still searching. I can tell you they want Dayton Moore to get into the race, the former Royals general manager. They want him to get into the race. Trump wants to talk to Dayton Moore. But it's not clear to me that Dayton Moore is all that interested. I mean, he's come on the show. He's talked about expressing interest and kind of doing the exploratory campaign thing. But, you know, at some point, you're going to have to decide what exactly you want to do. And it's not clear to me that he's actually going to pull the trigger on that. Now you got Paul Finebaum in Alabama, who is a staple in a very crowded race, and he would stick out, and similar to Kansas, you get 30, 35%, you probably win the whole shebang. You got that thing in your back pocket. If you get Trump support, then it's game, set, match. And you know that, listen, Trump likes people who have levels of fame already. He likes that central casting look. Dayton certainly has it. Paul Finebaum, not so much. He kind of looks like your nerdy college professor. That's what Paul Finebaum looks like. But he's a larger-than-life figure in that part of the world. So he would overcome that. And Trump's been watching the guy on TV, I'm sure, as a football fan for some years. So Trump will probably look past the nerdy college professor thing and say, Paul, you're my guy. But it is a fascinating twist that combines sports media, news media, politics, and sports into one story. And when Paul Finebaum does it, hey, maybe we'll try to get him on. Once again, I know Paul. I've talked to him before, and he's a great guy. And if he hops in, well, that would be fun, especially if you're a college football fan. Bill O'Reilly was on News Nation last night, and he did a follow-up to the Jim Kimmel story. You know, he came back on the air last week. He was suspended for a few days after his comments about Charlie Kirk and, you know, the motives of the assassin. And Bill gave you something that you probably have not heard anywhere else on what was really going on behind the scenes as to why Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, decided to put Jim back on the air.
There's an article in the Wall Street Journal today about Kimmel. And I said this last week on News Nation, that this Kimmel suspension and then reinsertment into the ABC lineup wasn't what the press was reporting. It had nothing to do with freedom of speech at all. And the Journal today lays out what I said last week, is that the talent agencies in Los Angeles, all left-wing, 100%, threatened Disney and Bob Iger and said, if you don't put Kimmel back on the air, a lot of our clients not going to do business with you. That means you're not going to get actors and producers and writers and directors. We'll take it to another studio. Iger surrendered on the spot. And then Kimmel went back. Now, think about that. Think about the power that the left in Hollywood has to bring a company like Disney to its knees.
So this was not about Disney saying, all right, Jim, you have served a suspension that we think is appropriate, so you can hop back on the air. No. According to O'Reilly, and also the Wall Street Journal. That's not what happened. It was left-wing Hollywood that said, you put old Jim back on the air, and if not, we are basically blackballing Disney. Now, I would have called their bluff if I was Bob Iger.
Bingo.
I would have called their bluff and said, fine, you want to say that if Disney opens up its wallet for one of your producers or one of your stars, you're going to say no to that next Disney Plus series or that next movie? You're going to say no to that? Fine. But I'm not going to get bullied by some agents in Hollywood. I'm not going to do it. But I guess for whatever reason, Iger decided to fold. And I just think that says more about Iger than it does Hollywood, because of course Hollywood was going to Hollywood, John. That's not a surprise to me at all.
I'm with you. They're shills. The second they got a book to plug or they're dropping some new music to download, to your point, a series on one of the things like Paramount or whatever, yeah, suddenly they're available.
Yes.
Or somebody down the line. But, geez, it takes hundreds of Americans to produce that 1 hour, so surely they could have filled the time without some of these idiots.
You would think, right?
Right.
Oh, man. So that's where I think Iger screwed up.
Yeah, big
time. But,
if
we also...
that's true.
If that's true. But, I'll take my man Bill at his word, and I will take the Wall Street Journal for now at their word until proven otherwise.
Well, I'm with you, but they said he was suspended. They didn't say, you're fired, you're rehired. He was suspended indefinitely. It was going to end.
You're right. And that's the
when
part.
And why.
I don't know why there were people in Trump's circle saying, Kimmel's fired. It's like, guys, he was never fired.
Right.
He was on suspension.
Right.
Stop. But here's some numbers. So Jimmy Kimmel had that big Tuesday night. 1 week ago tonight, he got 6.5 million viewers, right? Well, he lost 64% of that number in the days to come. It was a one-night viewership for America. That's it. He went back to his old numbers of about a couple million almost immediately after the Tuesday night show. Even worse, in the advertiser-coveted 25 to 54 age group, he hemorrhaged 73% from where he was on Tuesday. People checked it out for one night, and then he was back to the same old crappy numbers, which when you talk about a guy in a country of 330 million people getting a late-night show on broadcast TV. I mean, when I was on Harris Faulkner's show a couple of weeks back on Fox, she does about 2 to 2.5 million. On cable at 10 o'clock Central Time. Jim has prime time on ABC, and he's doing about the same as Harris. And that's a testament to what Harris is doing, but it also says that Jim ain't doing too well. And that's why he had a chance to be super apolitical and just say, I'm going to have a massive audience tonight. What do I want to share with all these new potential customers of mine? Do I want to be funny for all Americans or just double down on my shtick that's got a shrinking audience? Well, he doubled down. And from a business perspective, it already shows. It's costing him. And he's back to the same old audience that he had. And it was a major missed opportunity. Oh, yeah. Feel the pump there on the text line. Pete just have John and Mark do naked laps around corporate woods with you. They'll be in shape in no time. Yeah.
Rampart General Squad 51, male victim approximately 65 years old.
I did the lap. I just wasn't naked.
That's true. You were filming the lap, so you're at least in shape to do a lap around corporate woods. Good job there, Mark. Pete Hegseth announcing that there are going to be new physical fitness standards for the military. That's just coming down. And speaking of people who could use some physical fitness, Rosie O'Donnell, let's do a wellness check on old Rosie. Hopped on Nicole Wallace's podcast. Boy, that's a doozy. Oh, my goodness. The purple-haired boomer ladies are going nuts over that podcast.
There's two I'd like to get a beer with.
Said no one ever. Yeah. Here we go. Rosie O'Donnell. Let's do a check-in. It's been a minute.
When people say, I changed my mind, we have to say, welcome back to reality. Let's all be Americans together, right? Because what's happening is not only happening to Democrats, it's happening to everyone. And when the Medicaid cuts go in, old people are going to start to die. To die. What he's done yet hasn't even hit us yet. Right. And if he's not stopped now, we have lost our country. And I don't know, Nicole, how it is that some people cannot see it. My therapist said, "Why are you so upset?" And I said to her, "Why are you not?"
Yeah. Yeah, I have that conversation too, because the gaslighting that I think you're alluding to, if you're a thoughtful, informed person, you do stop and say, well, maybe it is me.
You're going to the mental institution.
Rosie O'Donnell, everybody. There you go. What a doozy.
Now, were these comments made before the Steelers game in Ireland? Or is she back?
No, I think she's still in Ireland.
She keeps talking about our country. And I'm like, well, where are you, Rose?
Yeah, she's apparently in Ireland. I love how Rosie O'Donnell's probably wacko liberal therapist is like, lady, calm down. Calm down. And she's like, no, you're not worked up enough. That's Rosie O'Donnell to her own therapist. Her own therapist can't talk her off the ledge. Wow. Oh, my goodness. That is just I got to
gold.
I may have to watch more of that podcast just to get you more audio out of it coming up tomorrow. Holy smokes.
She's a real beauty.
That is something else from Rosie. And Nicole Wallace sitting there with a long face. Oh, I know. I feel you, Rosie. I feel you, girl. 8:21. We have Tirade Tuesday coming up here in 15 minutes. Get your tirades all lined up as we keep it rolling through the 8 o'clock hour. So the president posted something on social media last night, and I watched it, and I was like, did he really post this? Somebody's screwing with me here. And by golly, he did. He did. It is an AI-generated clip of Chuck Schumer, of course, the minority leader in the Senate for the Democrats, and Hakeem Jeffries, the House minority leader for the Democrats. It's AI-generated. It's the two of them standing next to each other at a podium. Hakeem Jeffries has a Mexican hat on. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, I don't believe, is in any way Hispanic. I believe he's just Black American. He's got one of those little hats on. They're playing some, Mexican music in the background. And then Chuck Schumer says this in an AI-generated clip that the president of the United States posted last night on social media ahead of the likely government shutdown set for tonight at midnight.
Look, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. We have no voters left because of all of our woke trans bullshit. Not even black people want to vote for us anymore. Even Latinos hate us. So we need new voters. And if we give all these illegal aliens free health care, we might be able to get them on our side so they can vote for us. They can't even speak English, so they won't realize we're just a bunch of woke pieces of shit, at least for a while until they learn English and they realize they hate us too. People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. I don't like Chuck, but that kind of made me cringe.
I know.
Let alone the fact of where it was posted.
I know.
The story.
I know. I'm like, did he? Don't get me wrong. I was laughing, okay? But he posted it. Now, there is some truth to the point that he's making there, where you are seeing the demographic changes within the political party.
The tragedy and the comedy there that was based in some truth.
Yes, exactly. You just can't deny it based on the demographic trends that are shifting within our political parties right now. I mean, it's happening. So that was, once again, AI-generated, posted on the President of the United States social media account. The media lost its mind over it, at least on certain cable news channels last night. MSNBC had this headline: Trump posts racist AI video after White House meeting with Dems. What exactly, even if you're like, listen, that's too much, what exactly was racist about it? It was comedy speaking in generalities, of course. But his point was, listen, you're seeing some of the key voting blocks within the Democratic Party moving to the right. That was the point.
Perhaps the visual presentation.
Well, maybe that was part of it. Yeah. But it's like there's nothing about that's inherently racist.
No, he's
right?
pointing out demo shifts in voting.
And that's what's happening. I mean, we talked extensively about it in the wake of the last election. But, of course, any chance that, MSNBC can run a chyron saying Trump is racist, they're going to take advantage of that, of course. Now, I don't think this thing is going to stick like maybe it would have 10 years ago. But it got some publicity last night. Roger Marshall, who's going to be here in 25 minutes, was on CNN last night. He was asked about it by Caitlin Collins, and here is what he said.
Is that appropriate in your view?
Look, I think sometimes the president plays with the press like a little boy and a flashlight and a dog. And he's shining the flashlight here and he's shining it there. What he's saying is this offer from the Democrats is ridiculous. $1.5 trillion on top of funding that they already agreed to. That what they're asking for is completely ridiculous. It's disingenuous. And then for the Democrats to sit there and blame Republicans for the plight of rural hospitals is just so wrong. The problems with rural hospitals would be their policy, not ours.
But couldn't the president just say, these demands are ridiculous, and not post a video with Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero and putting that voice over Senator Schumer talking about people of color and immigrants?
I think he said that several times already. And then for them to come and not to make any really serious offer, why didn't they just say, look, let's just talk about these extra COVID-era subsidies, these extra subsidies that are costing some $35 billion a year. Let's make those just for the people who really need them. Let's go back to the original ACA and make this for people under 400%. They didn't bring a serious offer there. Look, in my estimation, Chuck Schumer wants the government to shut down to settle a political score.
That was Roger Marshall on CNN last night with Caitlin Collins.
And Tyquan Thornton got a touchdown for him.
Doc's had a good couple days, is what you're telling me. He loves Tyquan Thornton. So, Marshall, I thought he handled that pretty well. He basically says, you guys are like the puppy where the president takes a flashlight and says, look here, or the laser pointer, look here, look there, look here, look there. And he's distracted you with this video that you guys are going to spend a bunch of time on. And yes, it will solidify. The people who hate Trump will obviously watch that video or hear that video and hate him more. I mean, that's not going to change. The people that love him are going to think it's pretty funny. And I think there are people in the middle who probably admit it's funny, but are like, do we want that from the president of the United States? And no one really gets moved either way by this. And they'll try to make it a thing, but I think that there are a lot of people, even in the demographics that are mentioned, that are obviously shifting to the right. Who's going to be like, not wrong. It's pretty good. Look at the border in particular, right? South Texas used to be all blue. Large Hispanic communities down there.
If only Saturday Night Live was as creative.
I know. And as edgy, right?
Right.
And actually had the stones to go out on a limb once in a while and take a chance and understand that with good comedy comes some blowback.